Welcome to the virtual open house at NUS Computing. My name is Angela Yao, and I'm an associate professor at the School of Computing here. If you're watching this, you might be thinking about computing, but also maybe wondering if you'll cope or belong or what the journey will actually be like. And so this conversation here today is meant to be an honest one about the challenges, about the learning, and also about how students grow at the NUS School of Computing, which we affectionately call SOC. So let me start off with a round of brief introductions.
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science. I'm also the assistant dean for outreach and the co-chair for the computer engineering program.
Hi everyone, my name is Kan Min Yan, or just call me Min, like the minimum function. So I'm the Vice Dean of Undergraduate Studies.
Hi, I'm Dong Jun. I'm a Year 2 computer science student, currently the president of the 28th Computing Club.
My name is Seth Gilbert. I am currently the head of department for computer science.
Hi everyone, I'm Anand. I'm the deputy head of department for the Department of Information Systems and Analytics.
So one of the most common concerns that we hear from students concerns fit, especially for the students who maybe don't have so much prior experience to computing or who are wondering if they're maybe good enough to take on this subject. So Colin, many of the students here, they worry because they don't have a strong coding background, for example. Can they still apply to NUS School of Computing?
Oh, that's definite. In fact, most of our people who apply here, most of them do not have any kind of computing background. And all of our courses, or at the introductory courses, they are structured in a way that we assume that you don't have any kind of computing background in the beginning. So what happens is that you go through these courses and you will build up your knowledge. Now, for those people who do have some computing background, it will give them some advantage at the beginning. But for most of the courses, you'll be on equal ground.
So what worries students the most before they arrive? And what do they usually realize after they complete their first year?
I think one of the worries that students have when they first arrive is the ability to catch up with the materials. Now, I'll be really honest. In the university, a lot of information comes at one time. But one of the things that you should also bear in mind is that usually most of the students are around almost the same level at the beginning. So one of the advice that I do have, if you do fall behind, is to always seek help from your professors early. I think something that I always advise my students, I always remind my students, is that your parents are actually paying for you to have a good education. So do always seek help from your professors early. And one of the beautiful things I like to assure you of is that the School of Computing has an excellent culture. All of us are very friendly, and most of us, we actually rather be called by our first names than by, Professor Tan or anything like that. So if you do see me in the School of Computing, just feel free to call me Colin.
To chime in, to add on to the fear of falling behind, I think that's very relevant to me, especially as a Year 2 student. And I think it's really very hard to not feel that way when you see fellow peers. Like as someone that didn't have a computing background coming in, it's very daunting to see that fellow peers have multiple internships before university even starts. And I feel for that, what I'll say to future students is that you should go at your own rate. You should learn at your own rate. And like the internships, everything will come as you pursue this degree. And so you shouldn't be too apprehensive. If you're interested in anything in SOC, just come and join the school and then see where you get at the end of the degree.
Yeah, and also I think just like what Dong Jun is saying, this is something that I often also tell my students, and sometimes maybe parents get a bit concerned when they hear this. But I do want to add, right, that I think you should not be too worried about your grades. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that grades are not important. Grades are very important. But I think what is probably going to help you more is to have a sense of curiosity and to have a sense of wanting to learn rather than to worry about, am I going to score an A for this course? Am I going to score an A for that course? And this really affects the quality of your learning here. Because if you are able to be a little less concerned about your grades and more concerned about learning, it will actually encourage you to explore a lot more, and you may find something that you enjoy a lot more within the program as well.
Thanks, Colin, and thanks, Dongjun. Now, Min, actually, sometimes I think people imagine there's a certain type of student who will succeed in computing. So the students who eventually thrive at the School of Computing, what do they actually learn and what do they actually need to unlearn?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that we really want to emphasize, as Colin said, is be curious, explore, because really all through your younger years, you've been worried about competition, PSLE or other things like that. But you've already arrived. When you come to the School of Computing, you're among the best of the best students, right? And one of the things that people have to unlearn is this quest to be the best out of everyone. We're actually here only in a competition with ourselves. We want to improve, we want to be curious, and then find out what really makes us passionate. Once we have that, we can exploit that, right? We want to say, oh, I really want this subject. I want to really go deep on databases or AI. Double click on that and go deeper, right? So that we can own that area. I think one of the things that students really regret sometimes is when they don't pay enough attention to the wider ecosystem of support in SOC. Not only do they have great teachers, but have great classmates, great student clubs, and all of these other infrastructure that's really meant to help students really take the maximum advantage of their environments.
I agree. I think one of the very important things is to make friends, because first and foremost, if you're going to study alone, right, it's actually quite sad and quite miserable.
Yeah.
So, join student activities, join the student clubs, make friends. And I think that network of friends, right, really helps a lot, especially when you're able to study together and you're able to help each other through various difficult things that you face.
Yeah, just to add on a little bit there as well, is that, older generation had to go through everything as a cohort. So they took all their classes together. But when we have students now getting friends and things like this, they can participate together, not as an anonymous student, right? They're with their batchmates and groups, and they can do projects together. There are lots of opportunities for that.
Yeah, so I fully agree with what you all have mentioned. And I feel it's really very important to come and make friends, although it might seem very scary. As someone that's also quite introverted, I think it was quite scary stepping to this campus, knowing that there's another 1,000 plus students in my cohort. But I feel you should go make friends, and through that, then your uni life will become more fun. Learning will feel less. You drag your feet less to go to lectures if your friends are there, and you can really tap on their experiences and their shared knowledge. So I have friends that went on various different types of internships, as they are all in different majors, and I feel that really allows me to understand what I want to pursue and what I do not want to pursue.
Thanks for giving your perspective on this, Dongjun. As a student also, I think we can maybe think about, a big shift for students once they come to university is that learning feels a bit different compared to beforehand. So maybe you can share with us also from your perspective, Seth, what do you think is the biggest shift that students have to change in terms of their thinking once they start computing at School of Computing?
Yeah, so I think it's certainly the case that university can feel different. It's different both because it's university and also because studying computing can be a little different. So one of the things we've been hearing about university life is the extent to which a lot of what you learn here is driven by your interests, your passions, and the effort that you put into it. We expect our students to show up and figure out what they want to do, what they want to study, what they want to spend their time, the student clubs they want to spend their time with, the courses they want to take. These are choices that you make here. So one of the things that's different is the extent to which what you learn is driven by your interests. The other half of it has to do with computing as a discipline. Computing as a discipline has both very foundational theoretic aspects and very hands-on engineering practical aspects, and both are important. So if you just expect to sit and lecture and memorize a bunch of slides that you can then reproduce later, that's not going to get you very far. You need to both understand what's happening in class and also be able to go home and use these ideas, use these tools, use these techniques to do things yourself. So there's a lot of hands-on using the tools, not just sitting in class passively memorizing things. And this can be a surprise for students sometimes.
Yeah, and for me, I think one very big change coming from a JC background was that there is a lot of independence when it comes to university. You can really choose what you want to do with your time, choose who you want to spend it with and whatnot. And I think and also other than that, there's also a lot of online resources available for students. So students who maybe are feeling that they're lagging behind their peers could go do projects, could pick up a new course from somewhere, and that really adds to your learning here in SOC.
Thanks for sharing your experience with us, Dongjun. So did you ever feel like you got stuck and also got stuck very early on? And then eventually, how did you get past this?
Yeah, I feel that I did get stuck numerous times because, as I think everyone kind of knows, our curriculum is quite rigorous. And I think how I worked around that was, firstly, I think back to the point of having having friends. It really helps to have peers who have maybe who are taking the course alongside you or who have already taken the course. And I first go to them and seek for their help. If not, there's always other supports available. Like there is your TAs, which are your tutor assistants, and there's also your professors, and even some modules, they have online platforms that you can go and ask questions, and the professor or whoever is free will come and answer it. And so that is how I work around. Yeah, that's how I work around like academic issues.
And you know, aside from talking to your professors, right, talk to your TAs as well, because your TAs are maybe about a year or so older than you, but they are all the A students. So it's good to talk to them as well, especially because they have actually taken the course, and very often they've taken the course with the same professor. So it's good to get some, notes from them about how to do well on the course, as well as to approach them if you have any kind of questions.
I think one important thing to recognize is that getting stuck is not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's a good indicator that you're actually learning something because now you don't know something and you have to figure out how to understand it. So very often students feel like, oh, if I'm stuck, it means I'm not competent compared to my peers. But that's really not the right way of looking at things. So one of the differences when you're studying in the university is that competition with yourself, right? When you're stuck on something, it means you reached a boundary that you now need to break through, and that can really be a wonderful thing.
And that's a really good point, actually, and that takes us right to our next question is, would you say from a curriculum perspective, how do you think the curriculum supports students in terms of helping them gradually build up confidence and also their capabilities?
Well, I think that we shouldn't sugarcoat anything. It's a rigorous curriculum. It's challenging. And the one thing that's good about it is that we do things progressively. So you're building upon things that you have learned in previous years. So for instance, in year one, if you learn some fundamentals or foundations of programming, in year two, year three, and year four, you're applying those things that you learned in year one without having to go through them again. So for instance, you might learn one programming language in year one, but we teach you enough enduring principles that you can pick up other programming languages on your own subsequently. And then you can use them in your senior courses however you want to use them. Right? We don't go back to those basics because we assume you've learned all those things, and our students do that progressively. So then the curriculum kind of builds on that, and what you really work on is applying the new things that you're learning in every course, but building on top of the things that you've learned before. And so that means you slowly, progressively build up these competencies from building small little mini programs that do funny things on your computer, to building full applications, to building full systems that thousands of users can use at any point of time.
That sounds really great. Maybe Min, you can help elaborate a bit more on this. Is from an undergraduate education perspective, how do you think the structure of SOC programs support students who are still trying to figure things out and not sure where their strengths or their interests lie?
So I think it's a really good point to riff on Anand's point, is that the curriculum is well structured to allow a bit of exploration. I mean, we don't expect students to know exactly where they're going when they come in. So it takes a bit of time for them to get settled into university life, but also to get a really solid foundation. And I hear it, but we always need to debunk that, computing is not programming. It's a computational way of solving problems. So when we have that problem solving foundation, then you can go around and explore how to actuate it. So programming is one area where we use as a foundation for exploring electives. And our structure of our curriculum is in many ways structured for that. So for example, I can illustrate for computing and AI, there's a common admission. So students get to explore both sides of these equations and then decide later on which is the right element for their exploration.
That sounds really great, Min. But now let's have an honest conversation, guys, about the workload here, because computing is known to be really demanding and really hard, right? Maybe Dongjun, you can start by telling us, how does the workload feel for you?
Sure. So I think for me, the workload is indeed, it does take out a lot of time. And I think these courses are designed to be like thought-provoking, as you're learning a completely new way of thinking at times. And I think one good thing about university is that you can really select what mods you want to, or what courses you want to go for. And I think that really helps. One piece of advice I'll give for, I guess, fresh students would be that don't do modules just because your friends are doing it. Like, don't chase certain modules just because you want to satisfy the criteria, the graduation criteria as soon as possible. I think that's one struggle that I faced. And I do believe that you should just manage your own time, manage what modules you think you can handle. And I think that's where you learn the most.
I think to add on a little bit to that, earlier Colin was talking about how you need to be curious. And I think when our students are learning things, they have to make a decision on what kind of things they're trying to be curious about. And a lot of those are based on what you do in class. And then there's a whole lot of things that you're not doing in class that you can kind of go into those different disciplines to learn something that's a little bit cross-disciplinary. Right? For instance, our students in the analytics program or in the business AI program might want to learn more about how businesses use technology. And a lot of that will be seen in their senior years, but in year 1 and year 2, they can actually make the effort to go and learn about those ways of thinking to complement what they're learning in class in year 1 and year 2, which is a different set of mental models. And in the end, you have to learn how to switch between the different mental models to solve problems that you're going to see in reality. So I think that curiosity is really something that students should spend a lot of time on and a lot of time developing. But to what you're saying, Dongjun, you do have a lot of classwork, right? And the way I kind of look at it is I ask students to treat it as a full-time job. What you're doing in class is 8 hours or 9 hours a day. Then you have this other 9 hours of your own time, and you should be learning things separately, things that you're curious about.
And I think one of the very nice things about our curriculum and about our courses is that there's really a lot of practical work. And that practical work, it actually gives you the foundations, right, to go and explore further. So aside from doing, the normal projects that the professors give, right, if you find something that's really, really interesting, I think it's very helpful to go further into those maybe projects or topics that you find interesting. And the other thing I think that's also wonderful about the School of Computing is, again, coming back to our student clubs, we have activities like, for example, NUS Hackers, who, they organize competitions and hackathons, right? As well as other clubs and societies where you can explore more technical stuff outside of a classroom. So I think that these are all very, very good drivers for you to explore your curiosity.
So we expect a lot from students.
But we also give a lot to our students.
Yeah, of course. The price of learning.
I think that's a good point, actually. And to follow up on that, then, what if students start to feel overwhelmed, right? Like, what actually will make the difference to help them actually recover and also keep on going, do you think?
I think students will feel overwhelmed at some point of their academic careers, and that's perfectly normal. But every student needs to find a way to address this problem on their own. There are a lot of different mechanisms, a lot of different structures that you need to support your educational process. And some work for some students and some work for others, but nobody has just one single thing. One thing that works really well, like we talked about earlier, was having peers, having friends that you can work with, that you can study with. There's a lot of project work in our courses. A lot of it is practical, so you're working with your friends on building things. But there are other things that you can do. And one of the things that I found very useful for students is that the more interested you are in the areas that you're studying, the easier it's going to be for you to really succeed. So even when you have difficulties, you're interested in figuring out how to get past them rather than treating it as a struggle. So that's where being curious helps.
I think it also goes back to what you were saying earlier about it's okay to not understand something sometimes.
Yeah.
That like it's normal and good that you see something, you don't understand it, it's confusing, it's hard, and you'll get there.
Colin, what would you say to somebody who's worried about coping?
Now, coping in what sense? So, for example, if you find that, as I mentioned just now, right, if you find that you're slipping behind, work together with your peers. That's the first thing. And secondly, right, do not be afraid to seek help. All right. You can, if you're not comfortable talking to your professors because you feel like maybe if you talk to them, you may feel like they might be judging you. Talk to your teaching assistants, for example. As I said, right, these guys are our A students, and they are usually people who have taken the courses that you are taking now, maybe a semester or two earlier. So the material is still fresh in their heads, and it is good for you to actually leverage that, right, and to talk to them. Now, on the other hand, right, if you are feeling really overwhelmed, not just by the contents of the courses you're taking, but really overwhelmed by life in general, we have avenues for you to seek help as well. Okay, so one of the first avenues to seek help might be, once again, to talk to your professors. But we also have a very good student life section who will take very good care of you if you really feel very overwhelmed by what's happening around you. Right.
I think that's what's important here is that there are many different layers here of support and help that you can get. For whether it's the TAs in your class, the instructors, the professors, the faculty, the Office of Student Life, the Vice Dean for Undergraduate Studies who's sitting right here.
Exactly.
We have many. Well, we have many layers of support to try to help students when they're struggling, whether they're struggling with academic material, whether they're struggling with coursework, whether they're struggling with social pressures or academic pressures. There are a lot of different. We recognize that's not always easy for people, and there are a lot of different structures we have in place to help.
Yes, and the thing is, once again, right, I think the important message that we're trying to deliver here is that if you are struggling, you're not alone. Okay, don't ever think that you're alone, because there are many layers of help that you can seek. And if we feel that we can't help you, there are still facilities outside of the school itself that's provided by universities that we can refer you to for further help. So don't worry about it.
So, Minyan, for some of the students coming in, they're interested in computing, but maybe they aren't sure which program is suitable for them or which ones they're ready to decide or commit to, right? So if I'm a student coming in who's interested in computing, but I'm not sure which program is for me, how do I find out whether this is the right environment and also the right program for me?
So that's a great question, Angela, because the curriculum at SOC is a large spectrum. By choosing a particular program, you're not like binding you in a box, right? There are ways that you can shape each program to look a little bit like each other, but there's an emphasis on certain skills. So for example, AI is a bit more narrow than the general CS program, and so it's a little bit more niche, but we have time in our curriculum to explore whether that general degree of CS or a more specialized degree in AI is a better fit for you. So, I wouldn't say that there's a right spot and a wrong spot. It's just more like you pick where you want to start out from. And from there, you can sort of feel your way around until you see the lay of the land. You pick a direction to go. So that's why we say, our curriculum is more like scaffolded. You get a lay of the land, you decide which direction you want to go. And then by year 2 or year 3, after you've gotten the foundations, you can declare which program is the right one for you. I mean, of course, it helps a lot if you've already decided that at the beginning. Yeah.
Well, that's all for today, folks. Thanks so much for your time. So as you explore the virtual open house today, if you start to get a clear idea of what matters to you, how you will learn, what kind of challenges energize you, and what kind of environment helps you grow, then you're already in a good place. So take those questions with you as you continue exploring School of Computing. And if you can, come and speak to us at our open house session. Conversations often make things clearer, so we're looking forward to seeing you next week.
Come and look for us.